first thing I wanted to go over, and this is absolutely just appalling here. This video, uh, what this is it's shit. There we go. It's a debate with Mat Walsh, who, if you don't know, he's in the host for the Daily Wire, and he's quite sexist, racist, chauvinistic. He's basically a white nazi. He's basically a Nazi. And he went on Dr. Phil just recently and decided to make a fool of himself, making fun of trans people and telling them that they're not valid and so on and so forth. So we're going to go ahead and get into this to start off with. I think it'll be an interesting segment here for you guys. So let's take a look, shall we? Cute couple.
I'm Addison.
And I'm Ethan.
We've been together for about
5 years.
And
Been
married
for 3 years.
I use they, them pronouns. Being non-binary just means that I just don't identify
Kind of reminds me of Jonathan from Queer Eye a little bit, just a little bit.
with the gender I was assigned at birth, and I don't identify exclusively with being a man or woman. I'm something in between, outside of that binary.
My pronouns are he or they. I also identify as a non-binary. To me, being a non-binary means having the sense of freedom to explore my gender in whichever way I want. I don't have to perform or pretend to be someone that I'm not. I can be my
They look so happy. Why wouldn't you be happy for them? Why would you just try to fucking rain on their parade, huh?
It's really important for us to share more information with
And
people
make up some
because
point.
people are curious and they want to understand, but sometimes they don't always have the opportunities to do that.
This is a hot topic.
Yes.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it a good thing?
I guess because it creates dialogue and it invites conversation to learn about other people.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are really confused about gender identity in these times, and it's good for us to have these conversations so people open their minds and relearn and unlearn to what we've been taught.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big thing, many of us, especially people in my generation, as I'm a little bit older, were taught our whole lives that there were only two genders. Now, at a very young age, we had a person at my school who was intersex. They were born with both sex organs, I believe, and had surgery later on in life. And so I kind of had an inkling at a very young age that was kind of bullshit, the whole only two gender things. But for the most part, I figured that was a rarity, and for the most part, there was only such thing as two genders. And so I, with a non-binary child, have had to unlearn a lot of those preconceived notions about what gender is. And not even before my child was born, or before my child came out to me, I had already began that journey of learning those things, due to the amount of trans friends and things like that I have. So.
And Addison, many people think gender pronouns are exclusive to the LGBTQ plus community, but that's a misconception, true?
Yeah. Well, everybody has pronouns. You may use he and him as your pronouns, right? I use they and them as my pronouns. We all may have a certain gender pronoun too, but I think it's important for people to understand that for trans and non-binary people, we often change our pronouns to reflect who we are when we come out and be who we are.
How do you explain the difference between sex and gender?
I consider sex to be our biological makeup. Our chromosomes or hormones, our genitals is a biological makeup. But our gender is more of an internal sense. So think of it like this. Sex is what's between the legs.
Yeah, and sometimes those things are tied together and sometimes they're not. So for instance, you may have some sort of change in, or difference in hormones from a natural considered traditional male. You may have all of the genitals of a male and whatnot, but you may have a hormonal difference which causes you to feel more feminine, and you may have an inkling that you don't feel like either. You feel like more in the middle. And as gender is pretty binary sex is pretty binary for the most part. It is a spectrum. There is a curve towards the middle there where things kind of intersect. And So that is possible. And then the psychological aspect is completely a spectrum, which most people just can't even understand. They can't even fathom how that's a thing. But it is, it's how people feel. There is a such thing as dysphoria. There is a such thing as feeling like you're not a male when you were born with the biological sex organs of a male. It's this isn't a joke. It's not a big gag or like, some sort of, oh, hey, you're on candid camera kind of thing. This is, how people feel, and we have to respect that.
And gender is what's between the ears, right? It's how we see ourselves on the inside.
Okay. And that's something somebody can't know. Gender is something somebody can't know just by looking at somebody.
Nope, yeah. Because everyone is going to present and express themselves in a different way. I know it's very confusing, right? Everyone's like, what is going on? But it's really, about us breaking that assumption that we can tell someone's identity.
This person is very, very well spoken and very like outgoing. I can tell that they have some confidence in their public speaking. I would watch this person if they were on a talk show or if they had a YouTube or Twitch stream.
Someone's story, their pronouns, even their name, just based on how they look, right?
Yeah. And so how does someone ask? How does somebody clarify that? Ethan, what's the best way? What's the most comfortable way?
I think for me, to create a safe space for people to share their pronouns, I will say, hi, my name is Ethan. I use he or they pronouns. What about you?
I think it's really important for us to recognize other people's pronouns because, again, we can't make that assumption. But for so many people who are cisgender, meaning that you do identify with the gender that you were assigned at birth, you're not transgender or not non-binary, I think a lot of people don't even question their pronouns because we already use them and it's already assumed correctly. But for so many trans and non-binary people, that isn't often assumed correctly. So we need to take the time to get to know people.
Cisgender, it says...
Yeah, it's like nobody... that's a good point in general. Like, people don't take enough time to really get to know each other these days. It's all like, screaming at each other in the comments section of a local newspaper, or screaming at each other in the comments of Facebook, or making Twitter posts about each other. Nobody really gets a opportunity to really get to know somebody and who they are deep down. I mean, I get it. Some people, you start to get to know them and you realize, I don't want to know this person. I get that. But for the most part, I think that it would definitely help bridge gaps in this country.
That describes a person whose gender identity matches or aligns with the gender he or she was assigned at birth. Now, this would be what has been traditional for centuries, right? Why does it need a term?
Maybe traditional for centuries in this country. I mean, there are other countries such as India and like Thailand and things like that where they do recognize at least a third gender, I believe.
If we don't use that term, then we end up saying maybe real men or normal men or regular men, right? Or we just say men, and then we say maybe transgender men, right? And the thing is that we need to realize that trans women are women, trans men are men too. And so we just want to have a term for that privilege, that assumption that your gender identity is going to match the one that you were assigned at birth.
All right, and then transgender, adjective, describes a person whose gender identity does not match or align with the gender they were assigned at birth. And then non-binary describes a person whose gender identity does not fit into the traditional binary of man or woman.
Yeah, so that's how my kid started out, was the traditional, did not fit into the traditional binary of man or woman. He's feeling a little bit more on the trans male side as he gets older. So I'm trying to use he pronouns a little bit more instead of they. But my kid doesn't really care as long as it's not, using the dead pronouns. Right.
And that term can be abbreviated to, and how do you pronounce that?
NB.
NB.
NB, yeah.
Okay, and explain that.
For transgender people, we are assigned a sex at birth, and when we grow up, you know, when there's a mismatch of how we view ourselves and how society views us, then we can choose to, you know, either medically transition or just socially transition or both.
My name is Mat Walsh, and I've written a book called Johnny the Walrus. This book is about identity and imagination.
Well, that was abrupt. Had this nice conversation going with these guys, and then you see this
He
evil fuck
identifies
come
as a
on the
walrus.
screen. What the fuck, man? They could have given us a warning we were about to see this fucking screwball, like, piece of crap.
And his mom's a little silly. She takes it seriously and thinks he really is a walrus. So she went on her phone, and there are people telling her that this isn't pretend. He's really
So
a walrus.
cringe.
And his mother takes him to the doctor to have him surgically transitioned and gets him walrus hormone pills, and then eventually tries to drop him off at a zoo to live with other walruses. Not only topping the Amazon charts, my book has taken the world by storm.
Oh, God.
You're saying that there should be no construct of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have been biologically created as and assigned at birth based on their genitalia. If they don't feel that way, that there's no construct that describes that, experiences that.
Well, that's got nothing.
Why does he get to say that, though? I mean, why does he get to, like dictate how people feel and what they want to be identified as? It doesn't make any sense that it gets to be the arbiter of that. It's kind of ridiculous and kind of conceited that he thinks that he has the answers or that he has a perspective of that just because he doesn't understand it. And that's the thing, is that's why it's homophobia, because you fear what you don't understand. He doesn't understand it, and so he fears it, and so therefore he hates it.
To do with the realities. You can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production.
Why would you say that? Okay, so what? It seems like the only reason he doesn't want to take part in it is because of his fucking preconceived notions, and so he gets to dictate to whatever he wants to people as to how he's going to address them. Would you walk up to an old man and just call him shithead because that's how you perceive him? I mean, what about respect for your elders and respect for other people? Just because you look at somebody and don't see something that you think is in the norm for you doesn't mean that you can't respect that person and their ideals and their perceptions of themselves.
You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your
Especially when it comes to an immutable quality, which is something about somebody that they can't change. These aren't things that they chose to feel. This is just how they are. It's who they are. It's not it's like trying to tell an autistic person, oh, stop being autistic. You can't do that necessarily. And it's like telling a person it's like telling Mat Walsh to be a woman. Stop pretending you're a man. It doesn't make any sense.
your own adjectives. It's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant. And whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify. Makes no sense.
Those are adjectives that are not inherent that are more of a subjective nature, right? So if somebody, in my opinion, if somebody is a non-binary or trans person, they objectively feel that way as a woman or a man, and they objectively express themselves as that. So why would you come in and just tell them that that's not who they are and that they're lying to themselves or whatnot? With handsome or amazing, I think those qualities are kind of something that is in the eye of the beholder rather than something inherent to somebody. Is the point I'm trying to get to.
Don't get your own pronouns. That's grammar, that's language.
So you think it's a delusion? Someone is self-delusional
Yeah, I think it's delusion. It could be mental illness. It could be it's a lot of different things. With children, you know, there's also just a basic confusion that all kids have. Like that's why when you hear a parent say, "Oh, my 4-year-old son came to me and said that I'm a girl now, and so that's what I'm gonna raise him as a girl." No, you're 4-year-old. I have 4 kids. When a 4-year-old boy comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a girl," here's a good follow-up question. What is a girl? Ask him what he means by that. What do you mean by girl? And when you ask him that,
Yeah, what do you mean, Matt? What do you mean?
here's what he'll tell you. He will tell you what he really means is that he wants to do some of the things that girls do, like play with the dollhouse, or you know, he likes the color pink. That's fine. Play with the dollhouse, but you're still a boy. And that's a question I would like to throw out to other members of the panel, actually, because just like the 4-year-old can't answer what is a girl. Well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. It's like, what is a woman?
Well-
Can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't. Because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what does a female mean?
Well,
how
that's
do you define a female?
someone with female reproductive organs.
Okay.
Someone who's, here's the thing, when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA. So that's why if someone dies,
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Like, God damn it. Like, it's been proven. Doctors have proven the fact that even sex is on a spectrum a little bit. There may be hormone differences. Just because you are physically born with a certain set of genitals doesn't mean that everything about you fits the traditional sense of what those genitals are. There's more of a spectrum on those things.
Okay.
we could dig up their bones 100 years from now. We have no idea what they believed in their head, but we can tell what sex they were because it's ingrained in every fiber of their being.
Interesting. So I'm trying to understand. Your definition is that a woman is someone who is female, you said, right?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Is
Okay.
a biological female.
So what happens if we have maybe someone who is female, identifies as a woman, right? You know, cisgender woman, right? As you just explained, maybe doesn't have the ability to reproduce. Maybe doesn't have those organs that you're talking about that are reproductive organs.
I have answered the question. You stood up here and said trans women are women.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean. What is a woman?
Womanhood is something that, just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I am not
But
myself.
you used the word. So what did you mean when you said trans women are women if you don't know what it means?
Right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman. Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
That
who
describes what?
identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own.
See, this is why I sort of believe in gender abolition. I think that a lot of this conversation would be nullified if people just realize that there's a spectrum of these things. It's not just one or the other. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, maybe I have these sex organs, but I feel this sort of way, or I want to express this sort of way. I feel, and these guys, they have the same thing. They see Mat Walsh here. He says that, it's just a person with the biological organs of a female, of the female sex, which is not necessarily it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are other aspects that he attributes to a woman, that Mat Walsh contributes to a woman directly, and that would be traditional gender roles such as stay-at-home wife. She makes the babies, the man goes out and makes the money and comes home, and his wife cooks him dinner, and her place is in the home. He believes all of this stuff. He does. I've heard him talk about it. So it's not as if he is completely against the idea of gender and gender roles. So this whole line of questioning is actually BS. He's being misleading by saying what he's saying here.
Own gender identity and define it differently.
That doesn't-
And so
I'm not
trans
asking for
women are women too.
Okay.
And you want to hold on.
Say it again. Trans
You
women
want
are
to
women.
reduce.
What you
listen,
won't
listen.
even tell me
you
what
want
the
to
word
reduce,
means, though. So
you
that's
want to
the
reduce
problem.
women. You want to reduce men down to maybe just their genetics, our genitals,
No.
our chromosomes, right? That's what you're
What
saying.
you want to do is
that's what we're
what
not getting
you
today.
want to do is appropriate women. You want to appropriate womanhood
Okay.
and turn it into basically a costume that could be worn.
I'm really concerned about
Wow.
what's going on in schoolrooms across the country.
The entire gender pronoun situation makes me feel very upset.
People may think that if you don't want to use the preferred pronouns, that you're against gay people. This is 100%.
Oh yeah, I mean, then why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use them? Is that how is that hurting you to make somebody else feel comfortable by calling them the pronouns that they want to be called? It doesn't make any sense.
Untrue. I am a huge advocate for gay people, trans people, and the like.
Stacy and I both have children in the same school district.
I learned that the teachers in my children's school were asking for the kids' preferred pronouns in the classroom. When I heard about this, it was extremely upsetting.
Last year, my son was given a homework assignment. I gave an example of a child not identifying with the gender that they're born with. This is an example of the homework that was given to my 8-year-old son. If a student is unsure of their place in the gender spectrum or is experimenting with different forms of gender presentation, school uniforms can present a real challenge.
Oh my gosh. What is gender spectrum?
That's a great question. My son was really confused. I feel like I'm ambushed.
Gender spectrum is the fact that what I was just talking about, that there are a multitude of genders in between male and female, some outside of both. The whole idea of gender that we've constructed is a social construct, right? And we've been pigeonholing people and making them be placed in a box, in a certain box their whole life, even if they don't necessarily fit in that box. It's like ramming a circle block into a square hole. You know, it doesn't fit right. But we've been doing this to people since the beginning of, you know, the idea of this country, at least in Western civilization, for a lot longer than that, you know.
Because now I'm explaining to my son. He asked me, what does sexist mean? As a parent, I felt trapped. I felt I had to explain these concepts to my son. I felt like I was whittling away his innocence. This year, my 12-year-old daughter had a science teacher ask the class about their preferred gender pronouns.
I don't want a teacher talking to my child about gender pronouns. It is not appropriate. It's crossing a line. It's unacceptable. This is a parent-child issue, not a teacher-child issue. I wanted
Okay,
my
so
kids to have
how is a kid supposed, or how is a teacher supposed to know what pronouns a kid wants to be called? Should he misgender other kids just because you don't want your kids asked that question? Is that fair to the other kids for them to be misgendered and made to feel dysphoric because you don't want to address the issue? You don't want to learn, you know, about this stuff because you're closed-minded? It doesn't make any sense.
do with it. I had to pull both of my kids out of this school district.
I've decided not to pull my children out of the school district, but I'm fighting for change. I've been attending school board meetings for about a year now. What's happening across the country is teachers could get fired if they use the wrong gender pronoun. That just seems wrong.
This is my mission in life, to protect my children, and however I need to do that, I will. What Matt and I
haven't heard about anybody getting fired because they used the wrong pronoun. I don't know how deep that is. I don't think that that's necessarily a thing. I haven't heard anything about
and a
that.
group of us are doing is we're working to have the school board removed completely. A lot of people I know, a lot of parents I know, are afraid to speak up, and I speak for them, and I'm not afraid.
Arlo, how old is the baby now?
Oh, Sparrow's actually going to be 4 in February.
Has Sparrow decided as...
Oh, a gender?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great question. Sparrow is in a point of learning and exploration with a lot of things, including gender. Language with children at 4 is very, they're figuring it out. And so currently, Sparrow uses he for everyone. No, it doesn't matter what their pronouns are, and we mentioned it. They just call everyone he, they don't conjugate it correctly. They don't use him or his or anything. Just he for everything. So we joke that he is Sparrow's preferred pronoun because that's what they use for everyone. As far as for themselves, though, they're not coming consistently saying, "I would like, I want to be a boy or a girl," or "I feel like I'm non-binary." We don't have heavy, in-depth, like overt communications. It's not like every morning I wake them up and say, all right, what's your gender today? Hoping they'll finally give me an answer. So it doesn't come up like that.
Okay, you decided this was important to leave unspecified.
Unlike what most people who are against this believe, they're just like, oh, this is all indoctrination. You're gonna tell your kid. It's the opposite of indoctrination. It's them telling their kid that they don't have to be anything. You know, they can be and present themselves however they want.
Undetermined. Why?
Because of the fact that gender is so social and it is such a social construct. Now, we say we shouldn't interact with one another differently because of our genders. Like, everyone deserves the same respect and treatment. But it has been scientifically proven that children are interacted with very differently based on whether they are assumed to be a boy or a girl. You know, girl children are held more, boy.
I did a video about this just recently, as a matter of fact. My toxic masculinity video.
Children are given, you know, mechanical toys more often, all of these kind of examples and anecdotes. And I felt it was important for Sparrow to get the chance to figure themselves out without all of that pressure, intervention, and programming.
It seems like we should just keep the dialogue going and hopefully find some middle ground.
I have a question. Arlo, you mentioned that you don't have your child discussing pronouns or figuring out their pronouns yet.
Mhm.
And yet in school, our kids are being asked what their pronoun is. I'm confused about how that works. And then there's always this fluidity right around what pronoun you are each day. So it's constantly changing. How confusing.
I think
For
what it
kids.
is, oh, sorry. I think what it is that I sympathize with.
Well, I mean, kids are going to experiment. That's a thing. I know a lot of kids will think that they're a certain thing, and then later on life, you know, decide that they're another thing. You know, it's how things are when you're growing and learning yourself, and they should be given the latitude to do that, right? To figure out for themselves who they are and how they feel inside, you know, and asking what somebody's pronouns are isn't forcing a certain pronoun on them. It's just simply asking them how they want to be addressed.
The hurt and distress that I sense from you all. I also wouldn't want my child to learn things from their teachers at school that were topics I was uncomfortable with or I didn't know how I'd want to talk about them. Your children are going to need to know how to navigate a world in which non-binary and transgender people exist.
This is a great conversation to have at home, out of the school. This should not be part of the curriculum.
We're out of time, but
I don't think it's part of the curriculum. They're not teaching gender identity in schools. They simply ask what their pronouns are. You guys are blowing it way out of proportion.
thank everyone for your thoughts and ideas and for remaining civil about the conversation.
The dispute over gender pronouns.
I don't identify exclusively with being a man or a woman.
I use they and them as my pronouns.
You don't get your own pronouns.
You think it's a delusion.
In school, our kids are being asked what their pronoun is.
This is a war on gender.
New Dr. Phil.
Yeah. That was just some snippets of it, I guess. But as you can see, I mean, you can tell, even if you knew nothing about this subject and you only knew tone of voice and body language and so on and so forth, I mean, you can tell, like, on the looks on Mat Walsh's face and those two people's faces who were complaining about their kids being asked their pronouns, you can tell the disgust and the, like, just confusion in their brains. But you can see the clarity on the face of the non-binary people that were speaking as well. You can see how comfortable they are with themselves and how forward they feel about talking about this kind of thing, and how, you know, they're okay with navigating it. And I guess these other people aren't okay with navigating it because it's not who they are, so they don't feel it's necessary. It's more of a me sort of thing. It's like, and that's the right wing modus operandi, is it's all about me, the individual. You know, fuck the group. You know, fuck everybody else. And that seems to be the modus operandi within the alt-right, the right wing, Republicans in general. You know, it's always what am I getting out of this? Why do I have to do this? You know, It's kind of ridiculous when all these people are trying to do is live their lives and be who they want to be. That's it. Really doesn't make much sense, does it?